The wind howled like a dying animal as the five friends stood before the abandoned mansion, its windows black as empty eyes staring back. They'd heard the rumors, whispers in the walls, people vanishing, a curse older than the town itself. Yet here they were, drawn by curiosity and bravado, their laughter masking the unease prickling their skin. Inside, the air thickened, and the first whisper came, soft, familiar, calling Priya in a voice she knew too well. It wasn't the wind, it was her own. The whispering house loomed over Thornwood, a decaying shell of warped wood and peeling paint, its jagged silhouette piercing the stormy sky. It was March 23, 2025, and Priya had convinced her closest friends to explore the place before she left for grad school halfway across the country. She adjusted her backpack, her dark hair whipping wildly in the wind, her brown eyes scanning the group with a mix of excitement and nerves. This was her last hurrah, her final adventure with them. Beside her stood Vikram, her boyfriend of 2 years, his tall frame a comforting presence. His hand rested on her shoulder, warm and steady, though his easy grin couldn't hide the flicker of doubt in his dark eyes as he stared at the house. "Looks like a proper haunted dump," he said, keeping his tone light despite the tension tightening his jaw. Mira, Priya's best friend since they were kids, clutched her camera, her short bob bouncing as she snapped photos of the mansion's crumbling facade. She lived for moments like this, chasing stories for her blog, dreaming of a million hits. "This is gold," she said, her voice buzzing with excitement, though her fingers trembled slightly on the lens. Rohan, the group's resident skeptic, kicked a loose stone toward the sagging porch. Lean and sharp-witted, he always played the joker, but his smirk wavered as thunder rumbled overhead. "Whispers, curses, just a load of nonsense," he said, though his hands shoved deeper into his jacket pockets. "Let's get this over with." Arjun brought up the rear, broad-shouldered and quiet, his eyes tracing the mansion's broken eaves with a calm intensity. He'd come for Priya. He always had, ever since they were kids playing in the same muddy fields. His unspoken feelings lingered beneath his steady demeanor. "We stick together," he said, his voice low but firm, a promise in the words. They stepped across the threshold, boots crunching on shattered glass and brittle leaves strewn across the floor. The heavy door creaked shut behind them with a resounding thud, the lock clicking into place as if guided by an unseen hand. Priya's breath caught in her throat. "That wasn't the wind," she whispered, her pulse quickening. Vikram squeezed her hand, his touch grounding her. "Old houses settle," he said, but his grip tightened, betraying his own unease. The foyer stretched before them, vast and shadowed, a chandelier dangling overhead like the skeleton of some long-dead spider. Dust blanketed everything, cracked mirrors, overturned furniture, a grand staircase spiraling upward into darkness. Then it came, a whisper, faint but unmistakable. "Priya." Her own voice trembling, pleading, floating from nowhere and everywhere. She froze, her blood turning cold. "Did you hear that?" Vikram frowned, tilting his head. "Hear what?" Mira's camera clicked as she pivoted, capturing the empty space. "I got it on audio," she said, her voice edged with curiosity. "We can play it back later." Rohan scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Your imagination's running wild, Pry." But Arjun stepped closer, his jaw tightening as he met her gaze. "I heard it too. Your name." The air grew colder, heavier, pressing against their skin. The whispers multiplied, a chilling chorus. Vikram, Mira, Rohan, Arjun. each voice their own, echoing from the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Panic flickered in their eyes, their breaths misting in the sudden chill. Priya straightened, forcing her fear down. "We're explorers, right?" she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Let's find out what's calling us." They ventured deeper into the house, flashlights slicing through the oppressive gloom. The whispers trailed them like shadows, a relentless chorus of their own voices, weaving a song that sent shivers down their spines. The living room opened before them, its fireplace a gaping maw of blackened ash, a faded portrait of a stern woman glaring down from the mantel. Her painted eyes seemed to follow them, unblinking. Mira aimed her camera, the shutter snapping. "Creepy vibe, perfect for the blog," she said, though her enthusiasm sounded forced. Vikram pulled Priya closer, his arm slipping around her waist, his warmth a lifeline in the cold. "You okay, babe?" he asked, his breath brushing her ear. She leaned into him, her heart steadying against his chest. "As long as you're here," she said, managing a faint smile. Their love felt solid, unshakable, even in this eerie place. They climbed the staircase, its steps groaning under their weight, and reached a hallway that stretched impossibly long, doors lining both sides like silent sentinels. Rohan pushed one open, a child's room, toys scattered across the floor, a rocking horse swaying gently in the stillness. "No one's here," he muttered, but the horse rocked faster, its creaking growing louder. He backed out, his face paling. Arjun tried another door, a study, its bookshelves towering to the ceiling, papers fluttering across the desk despite the absence of any breeze. He picked up a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed but the ink startlingly fresh. "March 23rd, 2025, he read aloud, his voice trembling. "They came seeking truth. They'll never leave." He looked up, his eyes wide. "This is today." Priya's stomach plummeted, a cold sweat breaking across her skin. "That's impossible," she said. "This place has been abandoned for decades." The whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Don't go further. Turn back. You'll die here." Their own voices, warped with terror, pleading from the walls. Mira clutched Priya's arm, her nails digging in. "Those are us, Pry," she said, her voice shaking. "How can that be?" Vikram's flashlight flickered, casting jagged shadows. "Maybe it's a trick," he said, grasping for logic. "Speakers hidden somewhere, someone messing with us." But then the floor shuddered beneath them, and a scream, not a whisper, tore through the house. It was Mira's voice, shrill and desperate, echoing from upstairs. Yet Mira stood right there, trembling beside them, her eyes wide with horror. "That wasn't me," she gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Rohan bolted toward the stairs, his bravado cracking. "We're getting out of here," he shouted, racing down to the foyer. He yanked at the front door. It wouldn't budge. Arjun slammed his shoulder against it, muscles straining, but it held fast. Vikram pounded the windows with his fists, the glass unyielding, mocking their efforts. They were trapped. The whispers turned to frantic pleas. "Priya, don't climb the stairs. Vikram, save her. Mira, hide." Their future selves warning them of what lay ahead. Priya's pulse thundered in her ears. "They know what's coming," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have to listen to them." But curiosity burned brighter, a reckless flame in her chest. Vikram met her gaze, his eyes fierce with determination. "Or we fight it," he said, pulling her into a hard, desperate kiss. His lips pressed a promise against hers. Together. They ascended the stairs again, the whispers swelling into a deafening roar that clawed at their senses. At the landing, a figure materialized, a woman, translucent and shimmering, her face an exact mirror of Priya's, her eyes hollow sockets of despair. "You shouldn't have come," she said, her voice echoing Priya's own, layered with sorrow. Then she lunged, spectral hands clawing at Priya's throat. Vikram reacted instantly, shoving Priya aside and tackling the ghost. His fists passed through its form, but it raked claws across his arm, drawing blood. It dissipated into mist, leaving him panting, crimson streaks staining his sleeve. "What the hell was that?" Rohan shouted, swinging his flashlight like a weapon, its beam slicing the dark. "My ghost," Priya whispered, her voice trembling with horror. "My future ghost." They stumbled into the next room, and Mira's double appeared, holding a spectral camera, snapping photos of empty air. "You'll see," it hissed, its voice a twisted echo of Mira's own. It charged, lens flashing with blinding light. Mira screamed, dropping her own camera as Arjun yanked her back just in time. The ghost's claws grazed her arm, leaving burns that sizzled against her skin. "They're us," Arjun said, his breath ragged. "Dead versions of us." The hallway warped around them. Walls bled red, viscous and warm, the floor cracking like brittle bone. Vikram's ghost emerged next, towering and bloodied, a gaping wound in its chest. "Run, Priya," it begged, its voice breaking with anguish, then swung a spectral fist at Vikram's head. He ducked, pulling Priya down as it smashed a nearby mirror. Shards exploded outward, one slicing Rohan's cheek, blood trickling down his face. "We're not dying here," Priya yelled, seizing a heavy candlestick from a table. Rohan's ghost appeared, its face twisted into a manic grin, and lunged at him, laughing. "Skeptic no more," it taunted. Priya swung the candlestick with all her strength, striking its head. It burst into mist, but the house shook violently, plaster raining from the ceiling. Arjun spotted a trapdoor in the ceiling, its edges barely visible. "Up there!" he shouted, boosting Mira first. She climbed, her hands shaking as she pulled herself into the attic. Vikram helped Priya next, then Rohan, while Arjun hauled himself up last. The attic stretched wide, a cavern of cobwebs and dust-covered trunks, the air thick with decay. The whispers escalated into screams. "You can't escape! It's too late!" A trunk burst open on its own, spilling human bones and a glowing key that pulsed with faint light. Priya grabbed it, her hand burning at the touch, but she held tight. "This means something," she said, determination hardening her voice. Vikram's eyes locked onto hers, fierce and unwavering. "We'll figure it out, love," he said, his faith in her a spark of hope amid the terror. The attic floor split beneath them, a jagged maw opening wide as 5 ghosts, their future selves, poured through, decayed and furious. Priya's ghost led the charge, its hollow eyes fixed on her, claws slashing at her throat. "You led them here," it snarled, its voice a distorted mirror of her own. She stabbed it with the candlestick, driving it deep into its chest. Black ooze spilled forth and it shrieked, dissolving into ash. Vikram's double loomed over him, its strength unnatural, blood dripping from its gaping wound. "I won't let you take her," Vikram roared, grappling with it. He slammed its head against a wooden beam, the impact splintering the ghost into mist. But a gash opened on his side, blood soaking his shirt, his breath hitching with pain. Mira's ghost pinned her to the floor, its camera flashing blinding light that burned her skin. She screamed, thrashing beneath it, until Arjun hurled a heavy trunk with a grunt. It crushed the ghost, shattering it into fragments. "Stay with me," he said, pulling her to her feet, his hands lingering on hers a moment longer than necessary. Their eyes met, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them. Rohan's ghost darted forward, laughing maniacally as it dodged his frantic swings. "Skeptic no more," it taunted again, slashing his leg with spectral claws. He stumbled, blood pooling beneath him, but Priya threw the glowing key with desperate force. It pierced the ghost's chest, exploding it into ash with a deafening crack. The house pulsed around them, walls closing in, the air thickening with malice. "It's alive!" Mira cried, her voice breaking. They sprinted for a skylight at the attic's edge, Arjun smashing it open with a chair. Glass rained down, and the storm outside roared, but freedom gleamed beyond. Vikram lifted Priya toward the opening, his blood staining her jacket as he pushed her up. "Go," he urged, his voice raw with love and pain. She climbed onto the roof, the wind tearing at her, then reached back to pull Vikram up. Mira followed, then Rohan, and finally Arjun, his strength hauling him over the edge. The ghosts clawed at their heels, spectral hands grasping from the attic below. The key burned hotter in Priya's hand, its light pulsing like a heartbeat. Instinct took over. She slammed it into the shingles with a cry. A blinding blast of golden light erupted, washing over the roof. The ghosts shrieked, their forms disintegrating into swirling ash as the energy surged through the house. The structure groaned, a deep, guttural sound, and began to collapse inward, walls buckling, floors caving, dust and screams rising into the stormy sky. They slid down the slanted roof, tumbling onto the muddy ground below with bone-jarring thuds. Priya landed beside Vikram, her hands clutching his, their breaths ragged but alive. Mira hit the earth next, Arjun catching her arm to steady her. Rohan sprawled nearby, groaning, his leg a mess of blood. The mansion crumbled behind them, a heap of rubble swallowed by the night. They stumbled away from the ruins, the storm lashing their bruised and bleeding bodies. Priya clung to Vikram, their love battered but unbroken, his arm around her despite the pain radiating from his wounds. "We made it," she whispered, her voice trembling with relief. He kissed her forehead, a silent vow in the gesture. Mira hugged Arjun tightly, tears mixing with the rain on her face, her burns stinging but her spirit intact. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft, and he nodded, a quiet strength in his gaze, a bond forged in the chaos. Rohan limped beside them, silent for once, his skepticism shattered by the blood on his hands. The whispers faded into the wind, or so they thought. They trudged through the trees, Thornwood's lights flickering in the distance, a promise of safety. Priya slipped the key into her pocket, its warmth fading against her skin. She didn't notice it, pulse faintly, a subtle thump, 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 like a heartbeat. Nor did she see the shadow trailing them, slipping between the trees, tall, translucent, its eyes her own, watching with hollow intent. If you like this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more videos.